Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. It's Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's brought to you by Prop Swap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bets, take your profit, find out how. PropSwap.com. Download the Prop Swap app today. I'm Mike Gill today. A little Football at 4. Andrew DiCecco's here. Talk a little offseason, draft, free agency. A lot going on out there. Super Bowl, get his, thoughts on that. We haven't talked to Andrew all week, so we'll kind of get his overview of the game. Matthew Stafford, a lot of conversation about him moving forward, the Rams moving forward. Do they have the staying power? It looks like McVay is going to be back. There were some murmurs that he might go to television. Looks like Aaron Donald should be back as well. So Rams have a lot of story. What's next for the Bengals? Let's bring in Andrew DiCecco, InsideTheBirds.com. He joins us right now for another edition of Football at 4. Andrew, what's up, my man? How are you?
Hey, man, doing well. Yourself?
All is good. Off season officially here. I know this is your time of the year. You're probably getting ready for the draft, but just an overview looking back at that Super Bowl and some of the, kind of key moments for you that stood out in that game. Because, I don't know, it was an okay game. It had its moments, but it wasn't like a great game. It did have it was a close game more than a great game.
Yeah, I mean, the game itself wasn't overwhelmingly brimming with, big plays or that seesaw type of game. It was sort of it kind of unfolded like two boxers feeling each other out, and then there was like a lull there in the second and third quarter, and then the fourth quarter is pretty eventful if you're a Rams fan. So it was something that we sort of expected from the Bengals. How long could that offensive line withstand the pressure? And eventually you started to see them cave, and Joe Burrow was, taking a lot of hits late in that game that really affected and stalled drives and affected him late. And the Rams were obviously the more talented team, but they weren't playing like it. And I thought it took them a little bit long to get them the ball to Cooper Kupp, considering he was their top option, but they did. And he really took over late in that game, and you saw why he's such a dominant player. And what a memorable drive from Matthew Stafford and to Cooper Kupp to sort of end that drive. Thought that Logan Wilson penalty was a little bogus at the end there, to be honest with you. But,
yeah.
Other than that, it wasn't a very exciting Super Bowl.
Yeah, you had what Kupp did down the stretch to lead the offense. You had what Donald did over the last 2 minutes to kind of lead the defense. You had two just really standout performances there. And then, as you mentioned, the Bengals with their offensive line issues. I would imagine, Andrew, last year, they went with Chase. Can't fault them for that they have got to focus on fixing that offensive line in both free agency and the draft.
Yeah, absolutely. If they expect to be viable contenders in the AFC, they're going to have to fortify that offensive line. That has to be the number one focus. You won't be able to get it all in the draft, so I think they need to look at someone maybe like a Brandon Sheriff, the guard, formerly of the Washington football team, as maybe an option there because their right guard struggled mightily. Really, their whole interior really struggled, and then their right tackle. I mean, they're very vulnerable in many areas. So they got to strengthen that, or you're going to see Joe Burrow continue to have sort of an Andrew Luck type of start to his career, and that's not really what you want because it really can strip the love of the game away from the player when you're continuously just taking hits and nothing really is changing around you.
You're absolutely right about that. And the one thing for the Bengals side of things, as we kind of push forward here is it feels like, hey, they're going to be good and they're going to be in this, but there's no guarantee with the amount of quarterbacks on the AFC side. I think the Bengals have to really improve in that area if they want to make another run again. You can't just say, hey, we have Joe Burrow, we have Chase, and we're going to be in this thing for a while. They've got to improve because of the competition at quarterback in that conference.
You're 100% right on that, and that's something that it would be complete malpractice on their end to think that they're a player or two away from being back in the Super Bowl again, being a dominant presence in the AFC and in their division once again. You have to bolster the secondary. Eli Apple is not a starting corner in the NFL. He got exploited, much like we talked about last Thursday. We thought they were going to go at him. They certainly did in a big way. They need to strengthen that area on the cornerback situation. They have to get obviously the offensive line's been well documented. They have to get those areas straightened out if they want to return to the playoffs. not necessarily a guarantee that you get back into the playoffs after you just made the Super Bowl, because a lot of things can happen, injuries, and teams get better around them. So you can't rest on your laurels. You have to continue to improve and build the roster.
Yeah, Andrew, and then you look at the Rams side of things. Obviously, it sounds like McVay's going to come back. Donald's only 30 years old. It's not like the guy's 35 and doing some of the things he's doing. He is 30 years old. So they have a good chance, if they can keep that core together, to get right back here, because Stafford has now kind of elevated himself to the top of the NFC list. I don't know if he's the guy, depending on what happens with Rodgers, and we'll get into some quarterback stuff, but Stafford is certainly elevated up the list.
Absolutely. And before the season, he was someone that I picked as my league MVP just based on the surrounding talent. I always thought that he was criminally underrated as a quarterback, but it was sort of he was sort of a product of that Lions team, and he got overlooked, and he was playing in an era that had the Aaron Rodgers and all these other Tom Brady's, and it's easy to get overlooked, especially when your team's not really winning. But he put up pretty good stats. He's a tough guy, and I always thought that if he was in the right situation, I thought he would be able to elevate an offense, and you saw what he was able to do. Now, I do think that they need to add a couple more pieces there on offense, because you saw when Cooper Kupp, when Odell Beckham got injured, they didn't really have a whole lot around him. The running game wasn't really doing much of anything, which is surprising, because Cam Akers, in my opinion, is a very talented running back. I think that next season he's really going to be in the conversation as one of the premier running backs in football, because I think he's that talented. And then they have to figure out what they're going to do at receiver opposite Cooper Kupp. Robert Woods obviously coming off an injury, one of the best second receivers in football. Van Jefferson is a talented number 3, but he's a number 3, right? He's not someone that's going to be a game changer. And I think that they really need to find another explosive playmaker to really invigorate that receiving core. Given, depending on Odell Beckham's situation, obviously he's going to be going through get a late start to the offseason. So they have to continue to stockpile on their end as well.
All right, let's look at some of the quarterback stories, because I think, Andrew, on the free agent side of things, the quarterback trades, the veteran market is really going to be the most intriguing thing. I mean, there's good free agents out there, but this thing, Aaron Rodgers, Green Bay, your mind more likely to be in Green Bay or someplace else?
I have a feeling that it's going to have to be someplace else. To me, it seems like there's just too much there for them to be able to mend the fences. And it seems like if you read between the lines and you see some of the comments that Aaron Rodgers has made, it almost seems like he's reconciled that in his mind, that he's ready to move on and move on to another and start over somewhere else. But I don't know that I can't really foresee him returning back to Green Bay. I thought that this year, even this past season, was a stretch, but he made it work. But I don't know that he'll be able to do that again.
All right, so the dominoes start there, because you think Rodgers will be gone, so they'll either go with Love or somebody different. Then you've got Russell Wilson. I think this story, John Clayton's been on our show, said it's the most ridiculous story he's heard in 50 years. In other words, Wilson's not moving, but it remains out there. So Wilson in Seattle or someplace else?
I think Russell Wilson plays somewhere else next season.
Wow.
I don't know where that's going to. I don't know where that will be. It could even be Philadelphia. Who knows? But I think that based on Russell Wilson is a quarterback that wants to throw the football, and his philosophy doesn't necessarily coincide with what Pete Carroll, with the identity that he wants his football team to have. And you started to see them fracture a little bit last season, and I think that a change is going to suit both parties well, and I just see him on a different team next season. Don't know what it'll be, but I think that it'll be elsewhere.
Now, the one thing about that is Pete Carroll's in his 70s. I would imagine he's not going to be coaching for much longer. Does he want to coach a team that is going to be starting over at that position? That's the one question I have about them moving him. Like, does Carroll agree to not move on, or that they don't agree to fire him or move on from him, with the understanding that they're going to make another run at it together?
Well, he can agree to it, and he can say all the right things, but it also depends on what Russell Wilson says and what he's saying behind closed doors. And is he making a case that I just don't really want to be here. I want to go somewhere else, and I want to make a run at it. Maybe he doesn't feel that they're that close. Maybe he has other thoughts. Who knows? But it takes two to tango, as they say. So it'll have to, both guys need to be on the same page there. And I don't know that that's quite the case, but we're going to find out here in a matter of months.
Andrew DiCecco, Football at 4. All right. The Watson thing, I don't think anybody has a definitive feel on this situation because of his situation, but he's definitely going to be a major player in what happens with the quarterback position this offseason.
Yeah, and as of right now, I think he stays put until his legal matters are sorted out 100%. I don't know how any team can feel comfortable acquiring his services given the uncertainty that surrounds him right now. But obviously, yeah, if that situation sort of sees some clarity here, that's going to completely reshape the whole quarterback market.
Yeah, there's some reports yesterday, Andrew, that he's interested in Tampa Bay and Minnesota. That's an interesting one because Minnesota has kind of come out today and essentially, I don't want to say put their backing behind Cousins, but kind of made it feel like they're okay with Cousins being there. But if Deshaun Watson's available, definitely he'll be on the move at some point. We just don't know when. All right, let's go to Jimmy G in that situation because Jimmy G's not on the same level as these other guys, but he needs a spot to go. How does this look? How does his whole trade market look?
He's an interesting player because, like you said, he's not anywhere close to being on the level of the players that we've mentioned. And he does have a lot of glaring blemishes in his game, and he's very inconsistent. But given the dire straits situation of quarterback play in the NFL, there is going to be a team that's going to want a Jimmy G on their team that you can sort of plug and play as a starter. Again, don't know who that will be, but there's going to be teams like the Pittsburgh Steelers, like the Washington Commanders that are going to be needing a quarterback, and all these spots suddenly become destinations. There's going to be a lot of quarterback movement in this offseason, I think.
Oh, yeah, and we're looking at some of those possibilities. Garoppolo's interesting because there's a lot of teams that need a guy. You wonder, does Pittsburgh just say, you know what, I can get Garoppolo cheaper, let me go that route? Does Denver say, hey, I can get, do some of those because there's so many teams that already enter the season needing a guy. So I'm wondering how many calls San Francisco's going to get on Garoppolo. That to me is the interesting, because the higher level guys, some teams might not be in on, but it seems that all the teams that need quarterbacks can at least make a call for Garoppolo, right?
Yeah, that should be like the starting point. But then we haven't even mentioned guys like Derek Carr and Carson Wentz and players like that could also be available. So there's just so many things at play here that I think that, if you need a starting quarterback, I think you're going to want to call the 49ers because you know what you're going to get in Jimmy G. He's not necessarily going to be a world beater. He's not going to be in the running for league MVP or anything like that, but he's going to be able to adequately lead an offense and make the most out of the pieces around him. But he's not really going to move the needle that much further than like a rookie quarterback or pedestrian starting quarterback. He's not that type of player, but he is a competent NFL starter.
Now, is San Francisco making the right decision to move on from him and turn this thing over to Trey Lance?
I think so. I mean, they've invested in Trey Lance. Trey Lance is a far more dynamic player. He has the traits, and they believed in him enough to take him 3 overall to be the franchise quarterback. I think that his skill set really complements what they already have there, Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk and Elijah Mitchell and all these different explosive pieces. Jimmy G, he's taken them as far as he really can, and they're not really going to go much further with him at the helm, no matter how strong they are defensively or what pieces they provide around him offensively. I think that he's going to be better suited to go elsewhere, and they need to really the 49ers need to move forward with Trey Lance and start to build around him.
All right. Do you think that Minnesota is happy with Cousins and not looking to upgrade that position?
I mean, Kirk Cousins is another player. He's certainly a tier above Jimmy Garoppolo, but I think that he's another inconsistent player that hasn't particularly played well when in crucial situations, right? But I do think that he's made the most out of the offense. I think that he's a good regular season player. I don't know that he's someone that's you're going to feel totally confident in when the stakes are high, which is a problem ultimately. So I don't know how comfortable they're going to be with Kirk Cousins, having seen him for a number of seasons now. They kind of know what they have there, and I think that they're going to tell you that they're happy with him, but if there's another option that shakes free that they like even slightly better, I think they're going to be aggressive in trying to bring that player in.
Well, that was going to be my follow-up is, if Deshaun Watson says, I want to play in Minnesota, his legal issues are behind him, does Minnesota say, we can get Watson, now we need to move Cousins? Because that starts another whole flow of dominoes.
Right. That's exactly the scenario that I'm talking about. And if there's a player like that that's available, they'll tell you that they like Kirk Cousins. But if somebody like Deshaun Watson shakes free, they're going to say, yeah, thanks for everything. Thanks for the memories. We're going to try and get this guy.
Andrew, the Wentz thing, I mean, would he have a market? They're going to, does somebody want to trade for Wentz, or they just wait for him to get released?
Well, depending on how the quarterback market shakes out, there's going to be teams that are vying for his services and will be looking to trade for him versus trying to play the waiting game and have to vie for his services as a free agent when you might have other teams that are trying to court him. You might just want to go out and get him yourself and be aggressive in that regard. But I do think that he's going to have a market. I think that this is really the last stand for Carson Wentz. He's suddenly become a journeyman quarterback, right? And this is now going to be his third stop. But he does have enough physical traits, and he has been productive in the NFL. He had bright spots last season as well. So there are going to be teams out there that think, hey, it's not that he's completely stripped of his ability. Maybe we could make something of this guy, and maybe he can sort of direct our offense in the direction that we need to go in. And we're going to continue to add pieces around him for him to be successful. There's always going to be it always takes one team, and I think there's going to be at least one that thinks that they can. They're the ones that can fix Carson Wentz.
Well, I guess the question for that does arise is if Frank Reich couldn't get it, but he was 27 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. I mean, he did take care of the ball much better than he had the year before.
Yeah.
So where was it that the Colts are so unhappy with him?
Well, I think it was his inability to deliver in crucial moments down the stretch. I also think that maybe his lack of availability leading up to that Jaguars game when he was on the COVID list, I think that maybe disappointed the team internally. And just having that flat, lackluster performance when they've really committed to him, and Frank Reich went out of his way to bring him in here for these moments. He was healthy. There was no excuse. You were the better team. You had the better defense, and you had the weapons, and you fell short. And that was just like an ultimate demise. And I think to kind of go out in that manner, you leave egg on the face of your coach that went to bat for you, and you also leave egg on the face of the general manager and the organization. And I think that's a really tough pill to swallow. And then if you can't deliver in that moment, I think that they start to second guess their decision to bring him in, and they start to think, who do we need and who can we move forward with? Because then they start to have a little second guessing as whether or not he could be the guy.
Yeah, that whole story is, I think, going to be crazy to watch if he gets trade offers to get released. Because, Andrew, the hard part for me with this is seeing Wentz basically putting his tail between his legs as a backup somewhere. Like signing on with the team, almost knowing that unless he goes to a place to say, hey, we're going to give you a chance to start. But if he goes to it, much like Trubisky had to do, hey, I'm the number 2 pick of the draft. I failed in Chicago. I got released, so I signed as a backup. I just can't picture Wentz signing somewhere knowing he's the backup.
No, I don't get that vibe from Carson Wentz either. I mean, and to actually add to your last question, besides just that demise and falling apart and late in the season, there could also be other things going on. The locker room sort of dissension that was there in Philadelphia. I don't know if you've seen the Hard Knocks. He doesn't come off like the greatest leader, even in a new situation. Not very vocal, not a lot of accountability there. So there could just be that, coupled with just the Jaguars debacle there that really just left a sour taste in everyone's mouth. But no, I don't think that he'll be willing to, put his head down, work hard, go into a training camp as being a backup, and then try and earn a starting spot. I don't think that's in his DNA right now.
All right. Then you brought him up earlier, Derek Carr. A lot of smoke around him being on the move, but I would imagine he wants to stay in Vegas.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, he's going to command a high price tag, and I think that there's a familiarity there with Derek Carr. I think that you started to see them build and trending in the right direction. They overcame a lot of adversity this season in many regards, and I think that despite all that, you started to see what he was capable of with competent pieces around him. And I think that they're going to try and keep him in place if they can. And I also don't think that another team is going to be willing to spend, what it's going to take to bring him in, because I don't know that he's not in that elite tier, but he's going to command that type of compensation.
That's the hard part about this, man. I mean, he's in the final year of a 5-year, $125 million guaranteed money. It's all paid out. So, he's going to be an interesting guy to keep an eye on to say, hey, are we ready to move on and start over? And then, Cleveland, what do they – similar situation with Baker where he's in the 5th-year option. Do they say, hey, it's time for us to do something there? Will there be a different quarterback in Cleveland this year?
I think Baker at least enters the season as the starter. That's a team that I can see maybe drafting a young quarterback and grooming him behind Baker and then moving on after the season, because again, Baker Mayfield's a guy that's had a lot of chances. He's not someone that when you see, critical moments, you don't see them put a lot on his plate. They sort of lean on the running game, and I don't know that they believe that he's the quarterback that can really take the reins and elevate the offense and make these throws and to help win the game like Matthew Stafford did, for example. I don't know that Baker Mayfield is that type of player. But that said, just given the sheer amount of teams that need quarterbacks, Cleveland's a team that I could see drafting one and sort of grooming a replacement.
All right, good football conversation. The quarterback will be a very interesting thing to keep an eye on. And, of course, that all begins in less than a month when NFL free agency gets underway. That's just a taste. We'll do more offseason on Football at 4 tomorrow with Adam Kaplan. Andrew, appreciate it, bud.
You got it, man. Talk to you soon.
Excellent breakdown there by Andrew DiCecco as we went through a lot of the quarterbacks. And there's other ones, too, that we did not touch on that could be on the move, and other teams that are in play for a quarterback. We know the Saints need a quarterback. We know that Jameis Winston's a free agent. We know the Pittsburgh Steelers need a quarterback. There are other teams out there. Tampa Bay, they need a quarterback. This offseason for quarterbacks, man, it is going to be definitely something to make sure that you're checking in here on the Sports Bash Live, Football at 4 on 97.3 ESPN. We do it tomorrow again with Adam Kaplan.